Right. This is going to be a video about strategies for testing. Mainly, these ideas are to encounter both, what to do before, during, and after the test, but also what you might do in the moment when uh, you may have known how to do the problem, or you thought you maybe knew, but you have the pressure of the time, and you're just you can't think in the moment, and so maybe you forgot, or maybe just encounter something that you meant to study but you didn't get to it, or maybe it's something brand new you just haven't seen before. So, a couple strategies for how to encounter all of those scenarios, and to hopefully maximize your success on any test that is in your future. Okay. So a couple of the most obvious things are get a good night's sleep. I know it's easier said than done, but get a good night of sleep. Um, and it's sometimes hard, especially when you're really pressured. But there's something about having an opportunity for your brain to relax and to think, and to recuperate. You'll find that actually a lot of things that you were studying actually in the memory consolidation part of sleep really plays an important role there. Um, this is not a tip for everybody, but this is something that I like to do. I like to run or get some physical exercise before I go to take the test. I found that this helps to increase my what I feel like my blood flow. I feel like I'm more alert. It also reduces the stress levels in my body. That nervous excess energy that you get, I find is reduced and helps me to combine with a good night's sleep. Helps me really to perform at the best that I can, especially given wild card situations or novelty situations where you may not have experienced it in the past. So those are my two go-tos. Absolutely, anytime there's something new or stressful that's coming up, these are the two things that I highly recommend. And the third one is don't do anything out of your ordinary routine, unless it's maybe getting to the test already. But don't do anything out of your normal routine. There's something comfortable about routines, and it may help to reduce the stress that you may be experiencing in the moment of taking a test. So try to keep your routine in a normal fashion as much as you can. Um, I know that's always hard to do sometimes, but uh, anyways, try to keep that as simple as you can. Um, there's so many different options. I'm just trying to be as clear and concise as I can with each of these. So those are the top three things for the strategies before you take the test. Um, Also, in terms of actual studying, so some strategies for studying, uh, short amounts over time. What I mean by that is if let's say that you're taking the test in like 6 weeks, um, studying for like 30 minutes every day is way more effective than trying to study for like 5 hours the week before or study everything the night before. So, very much in the same fashion as like working out, right, or getting into shape. This is something that works better over time. So small amounts, like 20 minutes. Um, and then another thing that we typically do as human beings is study things that you don't know, study things that are challenging, especially in a situation where you may not have a lot of time. Our normal reaction is we usually study things that we feel confident in or that we can do. That reinforces that knowledge that we feel successful, and our brain loves that feeling. However, um, those are the things that you already know how to do. And so if you're on the test and you spend all your time studying things that you already knew how to do and you encounter something that you don't know how to do, um, one, it's going to increase your anxiety and lower your performance on the test, but also um, the things that you already know how to do, you already know how to do them. So reinforcing that doesn't make more effective use of your time in studying. So study the things that you don't know. Study the things that are already challenging to you. You probably already know what they are, but if you don't, then take the practice test as you would um, as the directions stay. So 2.5 hours, no calculator for subtest one or subtest three, and just really plug in away at it and see how well you do. Um, the ones that you encounter, oh, that you're just like, I have no idea. Those are the ones that you should be studying in this short amount of time, short bursts over time, right? So 30 minutes once a day for the from now until you take the test, kind of thing. Okay. So those are some study tips that I can recommend for that. So what to do before the test, the day of, what to do, weeks before the test, studying for it. Okay. Now, what do you do when you're taking the test? Okay. So taking the test, right? So here is the in order, relatively speaking, what you should do. Okay. The first thing you should do is look at each problem in the test without trying to solve it. In other words, spend 5 minutes just looking through the whole test. Just kind of looking through. What that does is it kind of helps to frame your subconscious into like how many problems there are, what kind of problems there are, and you'll start working on those ahead of time, so that as you get to them, as you go through your test, you may already have some insights that you may not have had otherwise. The second thing is that it shows studies show that when you take the time to look through the test, you're much more accurately able to finish in the time allotted instead of just starting to plug away. Okay. So that so there's lots of reasons. And there's several others, but I think that most importantly, it also helps to calm your nerves because you'll start to see. Um, I think I misspelled problem. I did. Uh, you also get to see what kind of problems are in the test, so you'll feel a little bit more at ease, at least in. Okay, let's see how this is working now. Okay, so solving every problem that you know how to do reduces your anxiety, but it also uh, moves you forward to completing the test. And so um, it's one of those things that oftentimes we try to tackle the hardest problems, and we spend a lot of time burning through trying to work on the problem. And I know it's really hard in the moment because you feel like, oh, there's one more. What about this? What about that? But it really, if you're having a hard time with the problem, just leave it and go on to the problems that you know how to do. Answer all of those first. That will maximize their chances of being able to, get a passing score. Okay, so solve every problem that you know how to do first, and you'll find that actually, because you went through the test the whole time at the beginning, that you'll be able to identify a lot of problems that you know how to do. Okay, and then third, and this plays into the whole part about like what do you do when you encounter something that you don't know how to solve, something that you don't know how to do. So use the test to take the test. And what I mean by that is, you've gone through the whole test at the beginning and you're looking through and it may submit in your mind that there's some things that maybe you don't know how to do, or maybe some things that you came across some words, for example, or some sort of definition, or it's asking you to describe something that you may not know. But if you're paying attention to to those words, to that wording, measure of this, and combine that with the types of problems that are on the test, you may find that some of the definitions or some of the context of another problem can give you insight into leveraging a solution process to the problem that you're having a hard time with. A lot of times, like definitional kinds of things or solution related kinds of questions have uh, elements of their problems in other forms of the test, other parts of the test. So that's the first one. And the last one in this regard for when you're taking the test is relate to the three avenues of thinking to 7 and 8 of the math practice standards. So if you're familiar with those, I would definitely get familiar with each of those practice standards. And if most of us try to solve problems in the realm of two, in other words, we're looking at numbers like quantities and relationships. Sometimes we'll draw pictures and that kind of thing. And that's really helpful, and that's usually a really powerful tool to get us to solving the problem. However, looking at the structure and what is repeated, those sorts of things can be leveraged oftentimes in unique and interesting ways that can make a problem either really accessible and therefore really easy, or can provide you with the insight that you need to be able to solve the problem. So I would really recommend getting really familiar and comfortable with each of these avenues of thinking. And I think that the main thing about like why math is so powerful and why it's so important is that the whole purpose of it is to be able to recognize in novel situations, utilizing the tools that we have, right? Mathematics is often thought of as not this creative, passionate kind of artistic approach, more like cold and logical. And it does have some elements of that, but it also is really, really creative. And here's an opportunity for you to flex that creativity, to utilize the tools that you do feel comfortable with and that you do know to solve problems that are maybe new and or novel to you. Okay. So those are the main ones for taking the test. And then last but not least, after the test, right? So before, during, and then after the test, reflect on the experience. Even if you pass this test, you're going to be oftentimes reflect on it. You're often going to have problems in your future or other actual tests, and it is the case. Um, reflect on your learning. Okay, what went well, and what was a challenge to you? And more importantly, maybe even is if you were going to be, uh, and what challenges do you have? And more importantly, if you were going to have to do this again, let's say that some wand was waved and you had to repeat this process, but you had the knowledge of having gone through this experience, what would you do differently? What would you do the same, and why? Okay, so that's a really important question because that's where the learning comes into effect. Okay, all right. With those things, keep those in mind as you are tackling these, and wish you luck. I'll see you in the next video.